Good morning, computer animation students. Today we're going to be looking at how to do a shark tracing. So imagine for a moment, I'm just going to share my screen. Imagine that we go to the internet and we look for a image of a shark. And typically, if you're wanting to find an image where you can see the side of it, you might go to a shark profile. So I'm going to look for a shark profile here. And when I find the image that I like, what I can do is I can simply right click on this, choose save image as, and then what I can do is obviously save this into my H drive, into my computer animation folder, and into my textures folder, and I'll give it a name shark. So once we've saved that, what we can do is we can go back into Blender then. So I'll just come into Blender here. And so once again, one of the things we always want to do when we're starting a new file is we want to make sure that we save. So we'll click on File, Save As, and we're going to go to our H drive once again, and we're going to go to our computer animation folder and into our assignment folder, and we would just probably give this a name Shark for lack of a better name. And save as a Blender file. So when we come back in, we should see that we have a Shark Blender file saved in my case, the C drive, but in your case would be the H drive, computer animation assignments, and then Shark. So the next thing we absolutely have to do is we have to change from perspective to orthographic view. So that's number 5 on the numpad. We're going to want to go into front view or top view, but in this case, we'll use front view. The only way that we can see a background image to trace a shark is if we are in orthographic view and either in front or top view. So at this point, I'm going to keep my cube where it is, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to press N, that's the letter N for Nancy on the keyboard, and I'm going to, in the toolbar that jumps up here, I'm going to scroll to the very bottom and I'm going to see the background image option. I'm going to click on that again and choose Add Image. And then I'll click on the open option. And in here, I'm going to go obviously to my H drive and into my computer animation folder. And I'm going to go into my textures folder and I'm going to find the shark that I just saved from the internet. Now, in here as well, if we want this to be a little bigger, we can also go down to size. Yours might be saying 10 instead of 5, but we can change this. We can double it or even maybe triple it. So I'm going to maybe make this 15. And so we have a fairly large shark here. Now, at this point, with our background image into here, if we press the letter N on the keyboard again while my mouse is in the 3D view window, it will get rid of that toolbar so we can see a little more of the screen. Now, at this point here, once again, what I want you to understand is that if you ever click and hold down the scroll wheel and toggle around and start to 3D pan, your image is gone. So once again, to get this back, you either go into top view or you go into front view. So we're going to keep it in front view here though. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to basically just use the scale tool here to scale my cube a little bit wider. And then I'll use my translate manipulator to just sort of bring it up and over a little bit. So it sits about here. At this point here, I'm going to go into edit mode. And in here, what I want to do is I want to just sort of start to, as you would suspect, start to kind of trace the shape of this shark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press A to deselect all, and then I'm going to turn off the limit selection to visible. Because once again, if I were to B to box select and select this point and then take a look, I don't get that back point. You can see that that's not selected. And I'll go back into front view unless I deselect and turn this limit selection off. And then if I box select, what you'll see is I have both points selected. That is very important because if you only have one point, you're only going to be moving one of the vertices instead of both of them. Now at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press G to grab and move that point down, and I'll just drag it down so it sort of traces that spot. So same thing, I'm going to A to deselect. You're going to hear me say this a lot, A to deselect, B to box select, and I'm going to select this point, G to grab, and I'll just pull this down a little bit. And so we've got this roughly tracing where we want it to go. Now, in order to move forward with this cube, which right now just looks like this, I'm just going to go back into front view. I'm going to A to D select, and I'm now going to B to box select. I'm going to select both these points. And instead of G to grab now, I'm going to press E to extrude, and I'm going to extrude out, and I'm going to extrude out all the way past this dorsal fin. So what I'm doing here is I'm allowing myself to then be able to extrude up from there. So at this point here, I'm going to A to D select, B to box select this point here, G to grab, and just bring this up a little bit. And then I'm going to box select here, A to D select, B to box select, sorry, and then grab these 2 points here, and then E to extrude. So I'm going to E to extrude, and I'm going to bring this up, and then I'm going to scale this in, taper it in, and I'm actually going to press W on the keyboard, merge at center to get this as into a point. And then I'm just going to press G to sort of pull this along. So this is starting to look a little bit like a shark. Okay. Now, at this point here, what I need to do is I need to A to D select, B to box select, and I'm going to select these 2 points, and then I'm going to E when I want to move forward and extrude out again. So I'm going to get it to about here. And then at this point here, I can A to D select, B to box select. Let me just see. I don't know if I'm going to B to box select after I have deselected everything. And then I'm going to extrude down. I'm going to get this dorsal fin. And I'm not going to worry about that other one that's there here, but I can just simply press W, merge at center to get this to be a point. And then I'll just G and sort of pull this over. So I won't worry about that second dorsal fin. I'll just kind of focus on this one right now. And then I can A to D select, B to box select, and I'm just going to pull this down a bit using G. And so once again, I'm going to then A to D select, B to box select these 2 points, E to extrude. And now I could do this in a few steps, but I'm going to do it really quickly just for sake of time. So I'm going to move all the way down to here, and I'm going to A to D select, B to box select, and then G to grab and sort of trace this a little better. Now, once again, if I did it in a few more steps, probably could do it a little more accurately here, but you can see the basic outline. Then I'm going to, once again, A to D select, B to box select this point, and then G and pull up. So what we see here now, though, is that at this point, we have sort of a break in the face here, and we need to really have, what we need is an extra vertice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to A to D select, B to box select, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, there's a couple ways that we could add an extra vertice. So if in edit mode, while we have this selected here, we could either scroll over here and we could choose subdivide, which would give us a separate point in the middle, or we could use this tool, which I am going to use, which is called loop, cut, and slide. So if I click on loop, cut, and slide, what happens is when I move over here, this I kind of moves, I get a pink line, I want it on horizontally across. So when I get at that, then I can then sort of move this up and down. After I click to the left button of my mouse, I can move it up and down. And when I get it to the spot I want, which is right where sort of the mouth starts, I can click with the left button of my mouse. So what I have now is I have a third vertice here on each of these sides. And so I'm going to A to D select now, and I'm going to B to box select, and I'm going to select just these 2 vertices here, and I'm going to E to extrude out. And I'm going to kind of scale this in. So I'm going to taper this in a little bit, and then G to pull up. So that's kind of the bottom of his mouth. And then I'm going to A to D select, B to box select, and I'm going to select these 2 points, and I'm going to extrude out this way. And then I'm going to S to scale in and taper his face in a little bit. So what we have right now, if you're seeing here, is we're having the starting of, it kind of starts to look like a bit of a shark. So I'm going to go back to front view, and now I'm going to focus my attention on the back side here. So I'm going to A to D select, B to box select, and I'm going to select this. And now, once again, we have these little tiny sort of fins here. I'm not going to worry about that at this point. I'm just going to extrude out. And once again, for sake of time, I'm just going to go all the way to the end. Now, we could do this in a couple of stages if we wanted, but in this case, I could even just sort of taper this in, scale to taper it in, and I can get this to look fairly close to where it should be. So at this point, we sort of have it looking like this, and we can then E to extrude again. And now this is the tricky part. I'm going to go right to the end here. I'm going to A to D select. I'm going to then box select these 2 points, and I'm going to extrude up here. And I know it doesn't look like it's right spot right now, but if I'm going to just W, merge at center, and get this to a point, and then just G and pull over. So I'm going to G and drag this over. And then same thing here, A to D select, B to box select, and I'm going to E to extrude, W merge at center, and then G and pull over. So what we end up with is we see something that looks like this. Now this is starting to look like a shark, but once again, it's kind of a very boxy looking shark. So if I were to go now back into object mode, and I were to select this, what I see is, you know, it looks okay, but it's a little bit boxy. And so in object mode, we learned before, if you recall, that we can smooth out. So that will smooth it a bit and make it less boxy looking. But another option we can use to make this even smoother is we can go over here and on this one that looks like a wrench, it's called the modifier. We can click on this and add a modifier. And when we go to add modifiers, there's one modifier under the generate heading that's called subdivision surface. So we're going to choose the subdivision surface, and we're going to increase the views to about 2, the renders to about 3. And so this is going to smooth this out quite a bit more. You can see it's very smooth looking now. So what we need to do though is when it's smoothed it out, you can see that also it shrunk the dorsal fins a bit. So we're going to have to go back into edit mode now and deal with that. So we're going to go into edit mode, and I'm just going to A to deselect, and then B to box select this point here. And I'm just going to G, and I'm just going to, it's kind of like almost like putty. I'm going to kind of grab it and move it down to where it looks like it should go. And then likewise, A to deselect, B to box select, grab this point here. And then I'm going to move this up so it kind of comes to where it should go. And I'll just A to deselect for a second here. And once again, A to deselect, B to box select, and just pull this up a little bit, and then do this at the back side as well. So A to deselect, B to box select, grab this point and then pull up. And you can just see I'm just sort of trying to get that to that spot as best I can. A to deselect, B to box select down here, and then G and pull down. So now this is looking pretty good. So what we have here is we have in object mode, we have a shark. Now, one of the things we do see with a shark is that clearly it's a little bit thin. So in object mode, if we were like sort of in side view and we went into scale, what we can do is we can sort of using the y-axis, we can sort of try and fatten this whole thing up a little bit. So I'm just pulling this out a bit so that we now have what appears to be a little bit more of a wide, which kind of, you know, represents a little bit more of the actual thickness and width of a shark. So the last thing that we want to do is I'm just going to pull this down so you can kind of see this. But basically, what we do see is that we sort of have two-tone kind of color pattern on this shark. Now, this won't do exactly like this, but it will be close. We can quickly, if we go into edit mode while the shark is selected, we can see that we have already, with that loop cut and slide, and that's one of the reasons I use the loop cut and slide, it has sort of divided my shark into a top and a bottom section. So now if I were to go into face selection, it's the face selection tool here, and I were to, while my cursor is on not limiting visible selection, I can box select the bottom part of this shark and see if I can try and get all of this selected. So that looks pretty good. That pretty much has what I want. I might want to shift right click on these two faces as well, just to get those selected as well. So once again, what this would enable me to do now is this would enable me to, in edit mode, once I have this bottom part selected, I could press P to separate. And then now if I go into object mode, I now have two separate objects. So clearly, if I look once again at this shape, I do have sort of a dark blue at the top and I have a grayish more at the bottom. So if I were to select the top part here and then go into materials and go to diffuse, I could try and choose sort of a bluish color and I could darken that up a little bit. Okay. And now it looks like it's taken it to both the top and the bottom. So if this ever happens to you, what you just simply need to do is I need to now select the bottom portion here and notice that this material has been applied to the bottom portion as well. There is this little minus sign here, and this allows us to remove that, which then gives us a gray material. So then yeah, I could keep the gray, or I could simply go in here and I could actually darken that up a little bit. And then basically I have my shark. Now, the only other thing that we might want to consider doing here is actually adding an eye. So what I can do here is in object mode, I could position my cursor up about here and I could go and choose in object mode, I can add a mesh and UV sphere. And so when I get this UV sphere, and I'm just going to, on the y-axis, I'm just going to pull it out a little bit so I can see this a little clearer. Went the wrong way with that, sorry. So I can see clearly that this UV sphere is a little bit big for the eye. So I'm going to press S and maybe about 0.3 or so. Excuse me. And so that looks pretty good. That's a good shape for an eye, but clearly the eye probably shouldn't be gray. It might want to be black. So in here now, what we could do is we could click on New under Materials and then go to Diffuse, and we can just take the black scale and make it right black so that we now have an eye for this. Now, obviously, we can see this eye is here. I could shift this over a little bit, and then what I can do is while I'm in side view, or just I'll go into front view and then just rotate around a bit. I can Shift D to duplicate, and then just pull this over. Oops. So Shift D, and then just pull this over and position a second eye on this side here. And so that's now we have a shark, and that's basically all we need to do for this assignment. So once you've completed to this point, you can just show it to me on your computer for a mark of 10 out of 10. The point of this assignment is clearly to show us how we can take a image, put it as a background image, and then use it, either a cube or whatever shape makes sense to try and trace around that object. And this enables us to oftentimes model things that are quite complex without a whole lot of artistic skill. Hopefully that all made sense to you. Thanks for watching, and good luck with your exercise.